What if Faith Lehane is the daughter of Samantha Carter? Welcome back to Born into Darkness, Season 2, Episode 3, Briefing Room SGC. Major Carter looked into the eyes of her own daughter before glancing behind her at Davis and General Hammond, who were standing off to one side in quiet conversation. She then turned back to Faith and assured her that she wasn't going to be taken away or harmed, not if Carter had anything to say about it. She knew that one part of Faith trusted her. It was the vulnerable part, the part that desperately wanted a mother who would love her unconditionally. But Carter believed that the other side of Faith, the side that was suspicious of everything and everyone, was still there, struggling to break free. And these people from the council coming here didn't help matters, Carter thought to herself. A few minutes later, the four people in the briefing room heard voices and footsteps echoing down the nearby hallway. Carter looked at Faith before gently reaching out her hand. The Slayer hesitated, only briefly before taking it, allowing Carter to guide her to the opposite side of the briefing room table. The table now stood between Carter and Faith on one side, and Travers along with whoever had accompanied him on the other. "Sir, we're ready," Carter informed Hammond with a nod before turning toward the entrance to the briefing room as three people entered, escorted by two airmen. She noticed that one of the men walking behind the older man in the brown coat was carrying a briefcase with a stylized logo embossed on its surface. "Airmen, you're dismissed," Hammond instructed. The two airmen turned sharply before walking away. The general then stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the older man who appeared to be the leader of the group. It was the same man who had somehow managed to gain clearance into the planet's most secretive project. "General George Hammond, I presume," Travers greeted as he extended his hand, which the general accepted. "Quentin Travers, head of the Watchers Council of Great Britain." "Mr. Travers," General Hammond greeted evenly as he motioned for him and his companions to take seats. "This is very unusual for a member of a foreign organization to gain access to this facility." "The Council has resources, General," Travers replied with a faint smile, giving a slight shake of his head to indicate that he had no intention of sitting down or staying long. His attention then shifted to the short, blonde-haired young woman, and he smiled pleasantly. "Miss Lehane, a pleasure to finally meet you." "You," Faith muttered as he instinctively stepped forward, her fists tightening. Carter immediately rested a hand on her shoulder. Looking back at her mother, Faith saw Carter gently shaking her head. The major gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze, silently asking Faith to trust them. Now, Miss Lehane," Travers continued smoothly as he met Faith's glare without flinching. He then glanced towards the man standing to his left and gave a small nod. The man placed the briefcase on the briefing room table and opened it. Reaching inside, he removed a single sheet of paper before handing it to Travers. The head of the council briefly examined it before passing it to General Hammond. "As you can see, General," Travers continued while the bald general and Davis skimmed through the document. "The U.S. military, in fact any military, does not have the right to have a Slayer in its ranks. We are aware that you know about the Council and about Slayers. I have no doubt that your president has informed you about us. Am I correct?" "Yes," Hammond acknowledged as he lowered the document before exchanging a brief glance with Major Davis. "Good," Travers replied. "In that case, I thank you for holding on to the Slayer known as Faith Lehane. As per the agreement with your government, the Watchers Council will now be taking custody of her." "Miss Lehane, if you please." "I am afraid I can't do that," Hammond replied calmly. Faith stared at him in surprise, while Travers and his companions looked equally taken aback. "I'm afraid you don't have a choice, General," Travers continued stiffly before gesturing toward the man beside him. "Wilson here can help you understand the legal—" "Let's not mince words here, Mr. Travers," General Hammond interrupted as he deliberately tore the document into pieces before crushing them into a ball. He handed it to Major Davis, who casually tossed it into a nearby wastebasket. "We do not have a Faith Lehane here." "Excuse me?" Travers demanded indignantly. "She's right there. Her hair may have been colored blonde, but—" "This," Carter declared as she stepped protectively in front of Faith, placing an arm across the Slayer's chest. "This girl's name is Ellie Carter, and she's my daughter." It was something Travers had never anticipated. The two people standing behind him exchanged stunned glances while Travers simply stared at Carter and Faith. He was the one who had signed off on Faith being taken away from her mother, a woman from a military family. He had even authorized the clone that would replace the infant Faith's body, the clone that would later be buried so her parents would never search for their otherwise missing daughter. And now, through a cruel twist of fate, mother and daughter stood reunited before him. "Before you say anything," General Hammond continued, "when Miss Carter came in after your people attempted to murder her in—" "General Hammond," Travers interrupted sharply as he fixed the general with a hard stare, "do not make accusations that you are unable to prove." "Mr. Travers," the general replied evenly, "we have one of the assailants in a secure location. He's under heavy guard. Once he regains consciousness, well, we have our ways of getting him to speak to us. Now, as I was saying, she came in badly injured. When we learned that she appeared to possess enhanced strength, a full chemical panel was ordered in case there were drugs involved. This chem panel included a genetic test. Through that genetic test, imagine our surprise, and Major Samantha Carter's, when we discovered that the young woman you call Faith Lehane is actually Ellie Carter, Major Carter's daughter. A daughter I was told died shortly after I gave birth to her," Major Carter added, barely containing the anger creeping into her voice. The unexpected edge in her tone caused both General Hammond and Davis to glance back at her before returning their attention to Travers. "I have the certificate of stillbirth, and we have the DNA test," Carter said. "And DNA does not lie, Mr. Travers," Hammond continued. "I have read your agreement with the government. It stipulates that you will provide aid to the Slayer and her watcher. It says nothing about kidnapping her across state lines or international borders, or assassinating a Slayer on foreign soil. Those are matters that I'm absolutely certain the President would be very interested in reading about in my report." "Excuse me?" Travers shot back, visibly outraged as he pointed toward Faith. "Are you aware of what she did?" "Yes," Major Carter answered firmly as she looked at Faith for a brief moment before meeting Travers' eyes once again. "I went to Sunnydale to question the people I believed were her friends, and they gave me some very interesting information about how the Council steals babies from military families using magic. I was also told what Faith did, or tried to do, while she was in the mayor's service. And that is exactly what we were going to discuss before your people arrived." "You have no right," Travers began angrily. Major Davis cut him off before he could continue speaking. "Miss Carter is an American citizen," Major Davis stated as Faith reached for Carter's hand. "She will not be taken against her will by a foreign entity such as the Watchers Council until—" "No," Travers interrupted, looking at General Hammond before shifting his gaze to Faith. He then looked back at the general. "Our agreement states that the Slayer will be the responsibility of the Council, and that includes conducting a fair trial back at Council headquarters in London." "That includes kidnapping babies?" Major Carter demanded, her eyes hardening. "You kidnapped my daughter from me. You gave her to a family that abused her. Tell me, did any of your people ever check on her while she was with the Lehanes? What our independent contractors do is on their own time and under the rules laid out by the Council," Travers replied evenly, foremost among them being that no military— "No," Faith cut in, "you're lying." "Miss Lehane," Travers began before nodding to the two men beside him, who immediately slipped their hands into their pockets. "Airmen!" General Hammond barked. The airmen stationed at the top of the metal stairs behind the three civilians stepped forward and raised their firearms. The two men flanking Travers glanced at the weapons trained on them before looking back at their superior. "I didn't believe in magic at first," Carter admitted, "but I talked to someone in Sunnydale who told me that the Council has many magical resources that could basically do anything. So those of you with your hands in your pockets will keep those hands exactly where they are, or you will be considered a threat to this base," Hammond added firmly, "and lethal force will be used. Is that clear?" Travers glanced at his men before giving a reluctant nod. They slowly stepped back. Hammond then instructed the airmen to escort the two men back to the surface, adding that if they tried anything funny, they were authorized to shoot them. The airmen acknowledged the order before directing Travers' two companions towards the hallway they had used to enter the briefing room, leaving Travers standing alone. Hammond motioned for the older man to take a seat. Now, Hammond began as he settled into the chair at the head of the table, while Travers remained standing with his eyes fixed on Faith. The general finally looked towards Davis, seated beside him. We would like you to answer Major Carter's question. Did the council know about Miss Carter's situation when she was placed with the Lehanes? I don't have to answer any of your questions, Travers replied coldly. Miss Carter, Davis prompted while Travers stared at him in disbelief. Can you tell us when you became the Slayer? When I was 15, Faith answered quietly, looking toward Carter, who nodded encouragingly. I was already out of the house and, well, I had to find ways to survive during. Look, let's just say I became a slayer on the streets. Then Professor Dormer found me and took me in. She told me about the council, my destiny, and stuff. Your first watcher, Carter asked gently. Faith nodded. I will not, Travers began as he turned toward the hallway. Stay and listen, General Hammond ordered. Ellie, Carter said, glaring briefly at Travers before turning back to Faith. I was told something about the deputy mayor and a Professor Worth. Can you tell us about what happened? Faith drew in a slow breath before telling them what happened with Finch, the deputy mayor. She explained that she had just finished fighting vampires in an alley when, in the darkness, someone suddenly grabbed her shoulders while her adrenaline was still surging through her body. She told them she had driven the stake into him, and when he did not turn into dust like every other vampire, she realized she had made a terrible mistake. That's a lie, Travers snapped as he glared at Faith. You left out Miss Summers' involvement. Ellie, Major Carter urged softly as she reached over and gently squeezed Faith's hand. We need to know the truth. Nothing should happen to Buffy. Faith pleaded, looking at Carter. I'm the one who killed him. It wasn't her. Finally, seeing an opportunity to eliminate two Slayers at once, since he might no longer be able to take Faith into custody, Travers spoke up. Buffy was the one who pushed Finch away, he declared. That was what led to Faith killing the man. I see, Hammond murmured. Carter looked at Faith, who was glaring at Travers with barely contained anger. The general turned back to Faith. Is it true that there were two Slayers in that alley fighting vampires that night? Yes, Faith admitted quietly, lowering her head before nodding. Buffy and I were both there. Finch put his hands on Buffy's shoulder, and she pushed him away. But I'm the one who drove the stake into his heart. She wanted me to turn myself in, but I told her that innocents die, that he was stupid to be in that alley when he knew we were fighting vampires. You'll be harboring a murderer, Travers declared as he faced General Hammond. I don't know what this deep space telemetry wants with a murderer, but this is outside your juris. It's called friendly fire, Mr. Travers. Davis interrupted calmly as he met the older man's gaze. It's something that happens in war, something I would have thought your council, which is apparently on the front lines of this war, should understand. It's tragic, but it happens. The fact that this happened to someone who was still a child, Hammond added as Major Carter glanced toward Faith, and that she received no support whatsoever from your council is the ultimate form of abuse and neglect. The council has kept this planet turning for thousands of years, Travers argued, all on the backs of little girls. Carter shot back, never taking her eyes off him. What is the typical lifespan of a slayer? That does not concern you, Travers answered stiffly. When my daughter is out there fighting on her own? Carter countered, emotion creeping into her voice. Yes, it concerns me a great deal. Buffy told me that most slayers don't last more than a year, Faith admitted. A year, the blonde major repeated softly as she slowly turned back toward Travers. I would have lost Ellie without ever knowing she was alive. Miss Carter, Hammond prompted as she looked at Faith. What can you tell me about Professor Worth? Actually, why did you join the mayor in the first place? Wesley, my new watcher,
Must have overheard, or maybe Buffy and Giles told him that I was the one who killed Finch, Faith explained. Then one of Buffy's Scooby allies tried to help me and, well, the council sent a team to take me in by force. Wesley led them and... That's a lie, Travers protested, but Carter rose from her chair and cut him off. Be quiet. She turned toward Hammond. I was told the same story by my source in Sunnydale, she explained. Faith was taken just as it seemed they were finally getting through to her. She nearly brought about the end of the world, Travers snapped, raising his voice. And you people are protecting her. She escaped your people, Carter shot back, remaining on her feet. Then she went to the one person she figured wouldn't betray her. I mean, she already felt betrayed by your council and by her friends. Who else could she turn to? And the funny thing about all of this? None of this would have happened if she hadn't been taken from me. Carter slammed her hand onto the table, glaring at Travers. He met her furious stare without backing down. Miss Carter, Hammond interjected, looking toward Faith while Major Carter continued glaring at Travers, her breathing heavy. Can you tell us about Professor Worth? Faith nodded before glancing back at Major Carter, who finally sat down. This time, it was the Slayer who reached for the Major's hand, gripping it tightly before telling her, and by extension, everyone else in the room, what had happened. She admitted that she had tried to kill Buffy's boyfriend so Buffy would be distracted from interfering with the mayor's ascension. She then told Carter that she had been ordered to kill the professor because he had unknowingly uncovered the one weakness of the demon the mayor wanted to become. Faith confessed that she had stabbed him before slashing his throat and leaving. She went on to explain that Buffy had uncovered some of what had happened, confronted her, and stabbed her. Then she woke up in the hospital. I see, Hammond replied, watching as Major Carter placed her other hand over Faith's and gave it a reassuring squeeze. So you were given an order to kill the man. Yeah, Faith muttered. You left out one thing, Travers cut in, staring at Faith. You died. Why don't you tell them how that happened? Excuse me? Major Carter demanded, turning sharply toward Travers before looking back at Faith, who had lowered her head with her eyes tightly shut. A new Slayer activated. And you know what that means, Faith, Travers continued, keeping his gaze fixed on the Slayer. You wanted to tell the truth? Well, Ellie, Major Carter urged after sharply telling Travers to be quiet. We need to know the truth, so please, trust me. Faith looked into Carter's eyes, hesitating for several long seconds before finally nodding. She explained that Buffy's most powerful ally was a special vampire, one who had a soul. Carter was about to interrupt, but after hearing Travers huff in open scorn, she decided to let her daughter finish. Faith told her mother that she had poisoned Angel and that both she and the mayor had known there was a cure. They had simply counted on Buffy discovering it too late. By the time Angel could be saved, the ascension would already have been completed. She explained that the Scoobies had discovered that draining the blood of a Slayer could cure Angel. So Buffy had forcibly returned to the apartment the mayor had given her and tried to take her back by force. Faith recounted everything, from her fight with Buffy to being stabbed, to Angel biting her, and finally to her death. She saw anger flash across Carter's face, making her tighten her grip on her mother's hand as she remembered hearing Giles's voice after he had resuscitated her. And then I woke up to find out that the mayor was dead, Faith whispered, and I was alone. So I just had to get out of there, out of Sunnydale. I was angry at Buffy. I felt betrayed by them, by the Scoobies. Giles brought me back to life and I guess I'm thankful for that. But but I guess in the grand scheme of things, Buffy did what she had to do to save the world. I was on the other side and it wasn't about war, Major Carter interrupted, her voice tight with restrained anger. Davis and Hammond both lowered their eyes to the table while Travers smiled, clearly convinced that Faith's confession had ensured Buffy would finally be dealt with by the military or handed over to the authorities. And then the council would have a reason to intervene with the Blonde Slayer. Freedom in exchange for full control of Buffy by the council. What Buffy did was personal, Carter continued, her jaw clenched, and vindictive. Major, Hammond began shaking his head when she looked at him. It sounds to me as though it was partly personal, but she was also responsible for ending the threat of this demon with the help of this vampire. He turned toward Faith. Miss Carter? Yeah, Faith answered quietly. But sir, Carter protested. They were opposing sides, Major. Hammond replied calmly. You know as well as I do what that means. However, that being said, Miss Carter was following orders in a war when she killed Professor Worth. That is something that will have to be taken into consideration. Given her status as a minor when it happened, I will be submitting a report along with a full psychological workup after we are done here. He paused briefly before continuing. As for Buffy, she fought an enemy, Miss Carter, during her mission to stop this demon. She defeated that enemy, and now she will have to live with what she did. The same goes for Miss Carter. She killed two people, one by accident, and the other under orders from her commander. One could mention in a report that he was a cult leader who brainwashed a minor. That is something that can never be changed, and something Ellie will have to live with for the rest of her life. Excuse me? Travers demanded. As for you, Hammond continued, fixing the older man with a hard stare. The president told me you have considerable resources at your disposal, magical or otherwise. Wasn't there a cure for this poison available? Something that could have prevented Miss Carter's death by helping this vampire with a soul? Hammond really could not believe he said vampire with a soul in a serious tone. The council does not help vampires, sold or not, said Travers. It goes against thousands of years of tradition. Then you are just as complicit in Miss Carter's death as is Buffy, said the general as Travis looked on. The only difference I see is that Miss Summers had no choice. To beat the mayor, she needed the strongest asset she had. You are the people who killed Miss Carter. You could have given Miss Summers the cure to save her asset, but you did not. That led directly to what Miss Summers had to do to save her asset. There are three slayers now, said Faith as she looked at Travers. The military has no claim to Miss Summers or to the new slayer, said Travers as he looked at the general, recognizing that he lost the battle for now. The council will not come after Miss Carter, said Hammond. If anything happens to her, and we suspect council involvement, rest assured that we will use every resource at our disposal to come after you. I doubt deep space telemetry can do much, General, said Travers. Mr. Travers, said Hammond as he stood up, as did Davis and Carter. Miss Carter is off limits to the council. Don't try our resolve in protecting her. Faith could only look on in silence as she watched the general talking to Travers to leave her alone. She then looked at her mother, who was looking at Travers. Faith knew that she had to apologize to Major Carter for what she had said earlier about tricking her, that the DNA test was faked. Faith recalled the look of hurt in her eyes, and then she saw how protective the older blonde was of her. Not just her, thought Faith to herself as she looked at Hammond and Davis. All of them. That's why they were so nice to me. That's why they watched over me. Faith looked back at her mother and suddenly felt a sense of pride when she recalled the major telling her that she hoped that her daughter would be proud of her. Cassie said that she's the smartest person here, thought Faith to herself as she looked at Carter. She's also tough, standing up for a murderer and standing up to that creep Travers. She looks at stars and planets. I bet she's one of those people who takes those cool pictures of those gas clouds in space and stuff. She works with satellites. I wonder if she does anything with the space station. I wonder. I wonder what would my life have been if I was never taken away, if I stayed with her. Faith then watched as Hammond asked another airman to escort Travers back up to the lobby, that they have finished talking. It was soon after Travers left that the tense atmosphere in the room just evaporated. Hammond turned to Carter and asked her if she understood his reasoning for saying what he said earlier about Faith and Buffy. Carter nodded her head and told him that she did understand before looking at Faith. She then looked back at the general and told him that she was doing what a mother's supposed to do, protecting her child. I can understand that, Major, Hammond said. He then asked Davis to join him in his office before dismissing Carter. He told her and Faith
that he'll prepare a report for the president. Come on, Ellie, Major Carter said as she gently guided her through the hallway out of the briefing room. I think Cassie should have arrived with Janet. Wait, Faith said as she stopped her mother. Turning around at the threshold of the hallway and the briefing room, Carter looked at Faith as the Slayer apologized for what she said earlier. She told the Major that trusting people was something that came hard for her. I have this feeling when I see you, Faith said, looking at the Major, that I mean, I know from what you showed me, from what you told me that you're my mother. And trust me, if you knew the woman I grew up with, then you have nothing to be sorry for, Carter said as she caressed Faith's cheek. I can only guess how hard your life must have been, Ellie. I'm just sorry I wasn't able to take you away from them. But now you're here with me. I'll earn your trust and your love. But just know that no matter what, I do love you. Faith gave a small smile before nodding her head as Carter led her to the infirmary for her full physical, and then arranging a full psychological workup before she could hang out with Cassie. Meanwhile, back on the surface, the airman had escorted Travers back into his awaiting car before he turned back. Once Travers slammed the car door shut, he ordered the driver to head back to the airport. Travers picked up the car phone and dialed the number. Sitting back as the other line started to ring, he finally smiled when his call was picked up. Reed, said Travers, I need you for a job in a week. No, not another baby. It's one where you'll be an adult. It's all to capture a traitor to the council. Meet me at council headquarters in London once you've completed your current assignment. I will provide you with the details then. To be continued.